Golf Pick'em Expert Picks. Brought to you by FootJoy.
Welcome back for another week of Golf Pick'em. I'm Will Gray, joined by Nick Menta. Nick, this is where we go through a bunch of head-to-head matchups for the WGC-Mexico Championship. You make your picks on the NBC Sports Predictor app, and we're going to start with a marquee matchup. The two guys that finished first and second at this event a year ago, Dustin Johnson, Rory McIlroy. Who's going to have a better week?
I'll take the guy who ran away with this event last year.
Okay.
And who's won it twice in the last 3 years since it's moved to Mexico, and that's Dustin Johnson. I know it seems criminal to pick against Rory McIlroy in this run he's on, but I'm going to take DJ, not only because he's rounding into form as of late, but in 12 rounds at Chapultepec, he's been under par every time. He's got a 67 scoring average. If I have to pick against Rory in a given week, this seems like the guy in the course to do it.
Yeah, it's interesting to note, without Phil Mickelson in the field, DJ is the only guy that has won at this course in the 3-year history. But I'm still going to take my chances with the world number one. I'm going to go out on that limb, take Rory, whose bad weeks and bad Sundays still produce top 5 finishes like they did last week in Los Angeles. He's motivated to keep that world ranking for at least one more week. He would pass Nick Faldo if he does it. It's tough. You throw out a lot of very good stats about Dustin Johnson and how well he plays here. I haven't quite seen enough out of DJ to really think that he's the guy this week just yet. I'll take my chances with Rory.
One last fact that doesn't necessarily portend to success this week, but if you throw out Tiger Woods, and that's a big if, no one has won more World Golf Championships than Dustin Johnson with 6.
You almost have me convinced. Still taking Rory.
Up next, a matchup of two top 10 players in the world, Justin Thomas versus Jon Rahm. Will, who you got?
Yeah, this is a lot of recent history versus course history. JT has not finished outside the top 10 in the 3 years in Mexico, including, remember, he had that memorable hole out on the 72nd hole en route to losing the playoff to Phil 2 years ago, but he seemed really out of sorts en route to a missed cut last week at Riviera. I'm going to lean ever so slightly to Jon Rahm, who has been just a top 10, top 20 machine. I think the Spaniard, who tied for third here in 2017, gets my edge.
I picked against Rahm last week at my own peril, and somehow that worked out, so I'm going to try it again this week. I do think that this is, even though he struggled last week, I do think this is the kind of course where Justin Thomas can bounce back and once again be in that late Sunday mix. So I'm going to, maybe at my own peril, but I'm going to stick with Thomas. And
Of all the matchups we're doing this week, I think this is the toughest. This is basically a coin flip between two guys who are really, really good. Our next matchup includes a pair of Aussies who have both recently won PGA Tour events, Mark Leishman and Adam Scott. Nick, I'll start off by saying that I'm going to take Adam Scott, who just won on Sunday at Riviera. He hasn't played this event in the last 2 years, but I'm rolling with the hot hand. I love what I see out of him over the last few months, and especially last week. I think he's got the edge.
I have to agree with you. Leishman in 2 starts here has been mostly uninspiring because of just how claustrophobic this golf course is, and for a guy who struggles to find the fairway pretty routinely, that's not a surprise. So I, too, will ride with the hot hand. We've seen Adam Scott go back-to-back before. In fact,
with the WGC.
Right before they moved here to Mexico. It's a tall task, but I'm willing to ride the hot hand. Next up, a pairing of past Ryder Cup teammates in Webb Simpson and Bubba Watson. Will, I went with Bubba last week, and he did play on the weekend. The problem is he was playing with Justin Bieber down the road, so I'm going to go ahead and pivot. I'm going to take Webb Simpson. Webb in 4 starts this season, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and a 7th. I like him to sort of fairway and green his way around this really tight course down in Mexico more than I like Bubba sort of blowing it over corners. I'll take Webb.
Nick, this is a course where we're at altitude and distance control is at a premium. Who leads the PGA Tour in strokes gained approach? Who's hitting their irons the best? That would be Webb Simpson, who won his last start in a playoff in Phoenix. As you mentioned, he's been red hot this year. He hasn't finished worse than 30th in almost a year. He has been lights out for a long stretch. I think it definitely continues. I think Webb is on the short list of potential winners this week, and Bubba off that missed cut and the T10 with Biebs. I think that Webb's got the big edge. Next up, Nick, is a battle of Englishmen. Tommy Fleetwood, Paul Casey. They both have a pretty solid history at Chapultepec, but who is going to have the better week this time around?
Yeah, Tommy's coming in here really hot. In his last 4 starts on the European Tour, he's got a win and 2 runner-ups. I know Paul Casey has proven himself on this golf course. He's had some success here, but I'll take the hotter hand coming in. I'm going to side with Fleetwood.
Yeah, I understand that. And again, this is a close battle. I kind of lean Paul Casey, who was 3rd at this event last year, albeit miles behind Dustin Johnson. But he's got 3 finishes of T16 or better in 3 trips to Mexico City. This is definitely becoming a course where you need to learn it quickly, and once you've got it figured out, you can kind of succeed. Tommy Fleetwood, who was a runner-up a couple years back, definitely has that pedigree as well, but I think I'm going to go with Paul Casey. Fleetwood hasn't played the last couple weeks. I'll take my chances. All right, Nick, our final matchup is between two guys who were teammates at the President's Cup in December, Xander Schauffele and Gary Woodland. Who gets your pick this week in Mexico City?
After the disappointment from Xander at the TOC, he missed the cut, but he's bounced back with 2 top 25s. In this event, he's been in the top 20 twice. I like him on this golf course this week for a guy who tends to sort of raise his game in some of the bigger events, whether it's the majors or the WGCs. The Tour Championship, for example. I like him to reemerge on the first page of the leaderboard and to contend for the title this week.
Yeah, he's definitely a guy who is hungry for that next win. Has gone over a year since with a lot of near misses. I am going to give him the edge as well. Really haven't seen much out of Gary Woodland. He won the U.S. Open last summer, but since then it's been hit or miss with him, more miss than hit. I think
and a pair of uninspiring starts.
Yeah,
here.
I think that Xander is the better player for this course, the better player currently. I think he's going to get the edge. But before we go, putting you on the spot, give me a tournament winner this week at the WGC-Mexico.
I'll stick with the guy I just picked. I'm going to go with Xander.
Wow.
I really believe that this is the week he jumps back, he gets that another win, and he makes up for the WGC. He couldn't quite close out back in China.
All right, the loss to Rory there in the playoff. I like that pick. I'm going a little off script. How about Hideki Matsuyama?
Oh.
How about Hideki? It could be time. He's starting to heat up. He played really well last week for a couple rounds in Los Angeles. He's putting together top 10s, top 20s after a long drought without him. He has a couple of pretty good rounds at Chapultepec. I think this could be the week. His last win was at a WGC when it was played at Akron. I think he could get back in the winner's circle this time around. Well, those are our picks. Remember, go on the NBC Sports Predictor app. Make your selections for Golf Pick'em for the WGC Mexico Championship. We'll see you next week.